The red emergency lights cast an eerie glow across the communication hub of Luna Station. Dr. Elena Vasquez rubbed her tired eyes, the 24th hour of her shift weighing heavily upon her shoulders. The massive array of receivers and transmitters that surrounded her workstation hummed with the constant background noise of the cosmos, mostly empty static, punctuated by the occasional burst of stellar radiation. Luna Station had become humanity's primary outpost for deep space communications, after Earth had been largely relegated to the galactic backwaters. The galactic community had labeled humans as Deathworlders, dangerous survivors from a harsh planet, and kept diplomatic relations to a minimum. Earth maintained this listening post more out of pride than necessity, as few alien civilizations bothered to communicate with the isolated humans. Elena's dark eyes scanned the readouts mechanically. After 7 years stationed on this lonely outpost, she had grown accustomed to the monotony. Earth Command rotated personnel every 6 months, but Elena had requested to stay. The quiet of space suited her analytical mind, and the distance from Earth's crowded cities provided a peace she had never found planetside. Another quiet shift, she murmured to herself, taking a sip of synthetic coffee from her station mug. The bitter liquid had gone cold hours ago. Then it happened. A signal, weak but distinct, flickered across her primary monitoring screen. Elena sat up straight, fatigue instantly forgotten. This wasn't the usual background radiation or commercial traffic from the established routes. This came from the Cthora system, a region that had gone silent nearly 2 years ago. "Computer, isolate and amplify," Elena commanded, her fingers already dancing across the holographic interface. The signal strengthened, revealing not one, but 17 distinct frequencies, all broadcasting simultaneously. The pattern was unmistakable. SOS, a distress call in its most ancient and universal form. Elena's heart raced as she initiated the emergency protocols. Computer, full spectrum analysis and translation matrix. Priority Alpha. The system hummed to life, decoding the multi-layered transmission. Data streamed across Elena's screen, painting a horrifying picture. "This is Cathoran Scientific Outpost 7. The translation read, "Invasion in progress. Civilian population under attack. Requesting immediate assistance from any allied forces. The Ravagers have breached our outer defense grid. Estimated casualties already in the millions." The message repeated, each repetition adding new details of horror. The Cathorans, a peaceful species known for their scientific achievements and artistic contributions to galactic culture, were being systematically slaughtered. Elena's hands trembled as she established a direct link to Earth Command. This wasn't just any distress call. This was a civilization's death cry. Luna Station to Earth Command. Emergency Protocol Zeta-9. I am receiving a multi-frequency distress signal from the Cthora system. Authentication verified. This is not a drill. Admiral Marcus Cole was awakened from a deep sleep by the insistent beeping of his secure terminal. As commander of Earth's defensive fleet, he received priority alerts from all monitoring stations, but a Zeta-9 protocol had never been activated during his tenure. "Cole here," he answered, instantly alert despite the late hour. "Admiral, this is Luna Station. Dr. Elena Vasquez reporting. Sir, I'm receiving a verified distress signal from Cthora. The Ravager Collective has launched a full-scale invasion." Cole's blood ran cold. The Ravagers were notorious throughout the galaxy, a collective of predatory species that harvested resources and enslaved populations. The galactic community had established a policy of non-interference, claiming that each civilization must defend itself or negotiate terms. In reality, it was an agreement born of fear. No single species wanted to challenge the Ravagers directly. "Send me the full transmission," Cole ordered, already moving to his command center. "And notify the Security Council. Emergency session in 30 minutes. Earth's Security Council convened virtually, their holographic projections filling the secure chamber beneath Geneva. President Victoria Hayes occupied the central position, her expression grave as Admiral Cole presented the evidence. The transmission is authentic, Cole concluded. The Cathora system is home to over 3 billion sentient beings. Based on the signal strength and degradation, I estimate they have less than 7 Earth days before total planetary submission. The council members exchanged uncomfortable glances. Defense Minister Jimenez was the first to speak. Admiral, while this situation is tragic, I must remind everyone that Earth is not officially allied with the Thorans. The galactic community's non-interference doctrine is clear. With all due respect, Minister, Cole interrupted. That doctrine has allowed 47 civilizations to be exterminated in the last century alone. The Ravagers grow stronger with each conquest. And what would you have us do? Foreign Affairs Director Petrova challenged. Our fleet is barely sufficient to defend our own system. We cannot risk our forces for a species that has never even acknowledged our diplomatic overtures. President Hayes raised her hand for silence. Dr. Vasquez, you've studied Cathoran communications for years. What's your assessment? Elena's hologram flickered slightly from the lunar transmission delay. Madam President, the Thorans are broadcasting on 17 separate frequencies, some of which aren't even recognized by the galactic community's standard protocols. They're not just calling their allies. They're calling anyone who might listen. This isn't a political maneuver. It's desperation. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Hayes turned to Admiral Cole. If we were to intervene, what would it look like? Cole straightened. We have 120 combat-ready vessels in the fleet. With emergency preparations, we could deploy within 12 hours and reach the Cathora system in approximately 3 days at maximum FTL. Against how many Ravager ships? Defense Minister Jimenez asked. Intelligence suggests the Ravager invasion fleet typically numbers between 700 and 800 vessels, Cole admitted. But they're not expecting resistance from outside forces. We could potentially leverage the element of surprise. President Hayes stood, her decision evident in her posture. The non-interference doctrine has turned the galaxy into a hunting ground. Today, we change that. She turned to face the council. I am authorizing deployment of the Terran fleet under Authorization Alpha 77. Admiral Cole, you have operational command. Your mission is to rescue as many Cathorans as possible and demonstrate that Earth will not stand idle while innocents are slaughtered. Cole saluted sharply. Yes, Madam President. One more thing, Admiral, Hayes added. Make it clear to the Ravagers and to the entire galactic community. The era of predation is over. From this day forward, Earth stands with the free worlds. As the council session ended, Elena received her new orders. Transfer immediately to the flagship Intrepid to serve as communications specialist for the rescue operation. Within hours, she was aboard a transport vessel headed for Earth's orbital military dock. The preparations were unlike anything humanity had undertaken before. 120 warships, from nimble destroyers to the massive Intrepid, moved into formation. Crews worked frantically to load supplies, weapons, and medical equipment. Military personnel said hasty goodbyes to family members, knowing they might not return. Elena found herself escorted to the bridge of the Intrepid, where Admiral Cole stood reviewing tactical displays. Dr. Vasquez, welcome aboard, Cole said without looking up from his station. I need everything you have on Cathoran biology, social structures, and defense capabilities. Admiral, my research is primarily in communications. You're the closest thing we have to an expert on the Cathorans, Cole interrupted. In 3 days, we'll be fighting to save their civilization. I need to know who we're saving and how best to do it. Elena nodded, understanding the weight of responsibility now placed on her shoulders. The Cthorans are methane breathers with silicon-based biology. Their civilization emphasizes collective knowledge and artistic expression. They're physically fragile by human standards. Their home planet has approximately 0.7 Earth gravity and a denser atmosphere. Cole frowned. Not natural warriors, then. No, sir. Their technological advancements focused on science and art, not weaponry. That's likely why they became a target. They have resources but limited means to defend them. Then it's up to us, Cole said quietly. As Elena was shown to her station, she caught sight of the fleet through the viewport. Human ships, built by a species that had evolved on a world harsh enough to be labeled dangerous by galactic standards, now preparing to face the most feared predators in known space. The Terran fleet departed in a coordinated flash of FTL drives, leaving the safety of Earth's system for the first time as a unified military force. The journey would take 3 days at maximum sustainable speed, 3 days during which the Cthorans would continue to die. Captain Jake Morrison of the destroyer Vigilant watched the FTL distortion field with a mixture of pride and apprehension. At 32, he was one of the youngest captains in the fleet, having earned rapid promotion through a combination of tactical brilliance and unconventional thinking. Now, those skills would be tested against an enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries. "Status report," he called to his bridge crew. "All systems nominal, Captain," his executive officer responded. "Fleet formation holding at designated parameters," Morrison nodded. "Open a secure channel to Colonel Rodriguez on the troop carrier Dauntless." The holographic display flickered to life, showing the stern face of Colonel Amy Rodriguez, commander of the ground forces designated for planetary rescue operations. "Morrison," she acknowledged. "My troops are reviewing the limited intelligence we have on Cthoran surface structures. It's not much to go on." "We're all improvising here, Colonel," Morrison replied. "I wanted to coordinate on approach vectors once we reach the system. My ship will be providing close air support for your landing teams." Rodriguez nodded. "I appreciate that. We're planning for 3 primary landing zones based on population density reports. The Ravagers typically concentrate harvesting operations near urban centers." The word harvesting sent a chill through Morrison. The Ravagers were notorious for their efficiency, stripping planets of resources, including the inhabitants themselves, who were processed for either slave labor or biological components. "My ship will be there," Morrison promised. "We'll keep them off your backs while you get the civilians out." As the secure channel closed, Morrison turned to his tactical officer. "Run Simulation 17 again. I want our response time to orbital threats cut by at least 20%. The 3-day journey allowed little time for rest. Throughout the fleet, crews drilled continuously, preparing for scenarios that no human had ever faced before. In the rare, quiet moments, many found themselves contemplating the enormity of what they were undertaking. A rescue mission against overwhelming odds to save a species they had never even met. On the second day, the Intrepid received a faint transmission, originating from deep within the Cthora system, but encoded differently than the original distress call. Elena was summoned to the bridge immediately. "Admiral, this is a protected channel using quantum encryption. It's not part of the general distress signal." "Can you decode it?" Cole asked. Elena's fingers moved rapidly across her console. It's already in a format compatible with our systems, almost as if they knew we were coming," Cole finished. The message decoded to reveal a communication from Dr. Vilan, chief scientist of the Cthoran Central Academy. He had apparently been monitoring Earth's transmissions for years, fascinated by human culture despite the galactic community's warnings about the Deathworlders. "To the approaching human fleet," the message read, "we have detected your FTL signatures. Our deep space monitoring outposts remain operational despite the invasion. We can provide tactical information about Ravager positions if you establish contact on this channel." Admiral Cole ordered an immediate secure response. Within hours, they had established a tenuous communication link with the Cathoran resistance. Dr. Vilen's information proved invaluable. The Ravagers had positioned their main harvester ships in orbit around Cathora Prime, with patrol vessels establishing a defensive perimeter throughout the system. Ground forces had already secured the major urban centers and begun processing facilities for resource extraction. "They're not expecting external intervention," Vilen explained in one transmission. "The galactic community has never challenged their operations before." "That changes today," Cole responded. "We need your people to be ready to move when we arrive. We can't save everyone, but we'll extract as many as possible." "I understand," Vilen replied, his translated voice carrying a weight of sorrow. "Our orbital observation shows they have already processed approximately 400 million of my people. The rest are being herded into collection centers." Elena felt physically ill at the casual mention of such numbers. 400 million souls gone in just days. The scope of the atrocity strengthened her resolve. With Vilen's intelligence, Admiral Cole assembled his command staff to finalize their battle plan. The holographic display showed the Cthora system in detail, with Ravager positions marked in red. "We'll execute a 3-phase operation," Cole explained. "Phase 1. Our fastest vessels will eliminate their outer patrol ships before they can alert the main fleet. Phase 2. Concentrated assault on the harvester ships in orbit around Cathora Prime. Phase 3. Ground forces deploy to extract civilians while our ships provide orbital support." Captain Morrison studied the tactical display. "Sir, their outer patrol is spread thin, but we're still talking about ships with superior firepower to our own." "That's why we're deploying our new stealth technology," Cole replied. "Your destroyer and 3 others will approach under active camouflage and take out their communication relays first. By the time they realize they're under attack, it will be too late to organize a cohesive response." Colonel Rodriguez pointed to the planet's surface. "My teams will need at least 5 hours to evacuate the primary population centers. That's assuming the Cthorans are ready to move, and the Ravager ground forces don't put up too much resistance." "You'll have your 5 hours, Colonel," Cole assured her. "But not a minute more. Once the main Ravager fleet regroups, we'll be severely outgunned." As the meeting concluded, a junior officer approached Elena with an update from Luna Station. "Dr. Vasquez, we've received a transmission from the Galactic Community Council. They're demanding that Earth recall its fleet immediately." Elena wasn't surprised. The non-interference doctrine was the community's sacred principle, a convenient excuse for inaction. "What's our response?" she asked. Admiral Cole overheard the exchange. "Tell them that Earth acknowledges their concern but will proceed with humanitarian rescue operations as planned. Add that we invite any community vessels to join our effort if they suddenly discover their conscience." The final day of transit was tense with anticipation. Throughout the fleet, soldiers and sailors made personal preparations for battle. Some wrote letters to loved ones, others checked and rechecked their equipment, and many simply sat in silence, contemplating what awaited them. On the bridge of the Intrepid, Elena worked tirelessly to maintain the secure channel with Dr. Vilen, coordinating evacuation plans with the hidden Thoran resistance. The aliens had organized underground shelters where survivors gathered, waiting for humanity's arrival with a mixture of hope and skepticism. "My people have never witnessed such direct intervention," Vilen admitted during one transmission. "We were told humans were dangerous and unpredictable." "We are," Elena replied honestly. "But sometimes that's exactly what's needed." As the fleet prepared to exit FTL at the edge of the Cathora system, Admiral Cole addressed all ships. "Men and women of the Terran fleet, in a few moments we will engage in the first interspecies combat operation in Earth's history. We face an enemy that has terrorized this galaxy unchallenged for too long. Today, we show them, and everyone else watching, what happens when you awaken the Deathworlders. Our mission is clear. Save as many Chthorans as possible, and punish those responsible for this atrocity. Fight with courage, fight with purpose, and know that today you represent not just Earth, but the very concept of justice in this galaxy. Cole out. The fleet dropped out of FTL in perfect formation, immediately executing Phase 1 of the operation. Morrison's Vigilant and 3 sister ships activated their experimental stealth systems and accelerated toward the outer patrol ring, targeting the Ravager's communication nodes. The first shots of the battle were fired in complete silence. Kinetic projectiles from the Vigilant's main guns tore through an unsuspecting Ravager patrol vessel before its crew could even register the attack. 3 more patrol ships fell in rapid succession as Morrison's strike team methodically eliminated the outer defensive line. Communications blackout confirmed, Morrison reported to Fleet Command. Outer patrol neutralized. No alerts transmitted to the main fleet. Admiral Cole nodded grimly. All ships, commence Phase 2. Weapons free. The remaining Terran vessels surged forward, dropping the pretense of stealth for raw speed and firepower. The element of surprise gave them a critical advantage as they tore into the unsuspecting Ravager formation around Chthora Prime. The space above the besieged planet erupted into chaos. Ravager vessels, caught off guard by the sudden appearance of an unknown fleet, scrambled to organize a defense. Their confusion was compounded by the humans' unorthodox tactics. Earth ships maneuvered in patterns that defied conventional space combat doctrine, closing to point-blank range where their kinetic weapons could inflict maximum damage. On the bridge of the Intrepid, Admiral Cole directed the assault with calculated precision. Focus fire on their command vessels. Disrupt their chain of command. Earth's largest warships, including the Intrepid herself, engage the massive Ravager harvester ships, monstrous vessels designed to process entire populations and planetary resources. These were the primary targets, as their destruction would halt the processing of Chthorian prisoners. Sir, Harvester ships 4 and 7 are showing critical reactor instabilities, reported the tactical officer. They're breaking formation. Press the advantage, Cole ordered. All forward batteries, concentrate fire on Harvester 5. The battle in orbit intensified as the Ravagers recovered from their initial shock. Their numerical advantage began to tell as more ships joined the fray from the far side of the planet. Human vessels took heavy damage, with 3 destroyers lost in the first hour of combat. Transports are in position for atmospheric entry, Colonel Rodriguez reported from the Dauntless. Requesting clearance for Phase 3, Cole checked the tactical display. The space directly above the designated landing zones was temporarily clear of Ravager vessels, though fighting continued across the rest of the orbital plane. Clearance granted. Begin ground operations. Rodriguez's transport ships broke formation and descended toward Chthora Prime, their hulls glowing red as they plunged through the alien atmosphere. Each carried specialized troops equipped with environmental suits designed to function in the methane-rich air of the Thoran homeworld. As the transports approached the surface, they came under fire from Ravager ground installations. Captain Morrison's Vigilant and its sister ships immediately adjusted their orbits to provide close air support, targeting the anti-aircraft batteries with precision strikes. Keep those guns off our transports, Morrison ordered, his ship shuddering as it absorbed a direct hit from a Ravager cruiser. Engineering, reroute power to forward shields. The first transport touched down near Chthora Prime's capital city, a sprawling complex of crystalline structures, now partly in ruins from the invasion. Colonel Rodriguez was the first to exit, her environmental suit allowing her to move freely in the alien atmosphere. "Secure a perimeter!" she shouted to her troops. "Move fast, people! We have 5 hours to evacuate as many civilians as we can." The scene that greeted the human soldiers was one of systematic devastation. The once beautiful Cathoran city had been transformed into a processing center, with captured civilians herded into massive compounds awaiting transfer to the harvester ships. Rodriguez's forces engaged the Ravager ground troops immediately, their combat training on Earth's high-gravity world giving them a significant advantage in the lighter conditions of Cathora Prime. What they lacked in numbers, they made up for in speed and firepower. "Building secure," reported a squad leader. "We've found approximately 3,000 Cathorans in the lower levels. They're alive, but in poor condition." "Get them to the evacuation point," Rodriguez ordered. "First transport leaves in 30 minutes, whether it's full or not." Above the planet, the space battle had evolved into a desperate struggle. The initial advantage of surprise was long gone, and the Terran fleet now faced the full might of the Ravager armada. The tactical display on the Intrepid's bridge showed an increasingly dire situation. Ravager reinforcements arriving from the outer system, while human ships fought to maintain their protective positions above the evacuation zones. "Admiral, we've lost the Dauntless," reported the communications officer. "Captain Hiroshi reports total system failure after multiple direct hits." Cole's expression remained stoic despite the news. "Order the Vigilant to assume the Dauntless's escort duties. What's our status on civilian evacuation?" Elena checked her console, where she was coordinating with the ground teams. "First transport is loaded and lifting off now. Dr. Violin reports they've gathered approximately 20,000 Cathorans at the secondary evacuation point." "That's not enough," Cole muttered. "We need to buy more time." He turned to his tactical officer. "Implement Delta Protocol." The officer hesitated. Sir, that would leave our own fleet vulnerable to—" "I'm aware of the risks. Lieutenant, execute the order." Delta Protocol was a desperate gambit. It involved deliberately sacrificing the outer defensive screen of the fleet to concentrate all firepower on the remaining harvester ships. In theory, destroying these high-value targets would force the Ravagers to protect their remaining assets rather than pressing their attack. Throughout the fleet, captains received the new orders with grim determination. The human vessels tightened their formation, creating a protective corridor for the evacuation transports, while concentrating overwhelming firepower on the nearest harvester ship. On the Vigilant, Captain Morrison watched as the massive harvester's hull buckled under the coordinated assault. "Target their main processing chamber," he ordered. "That's where they're holding prisoners awaiting processing." His gunners complied, sending a barrage of high-explosive rounds into the vulnerable section of the Ravager vessel. The resulting chain reaction tore through the ship's interior, releasing thousands of captive Cathorans into space, a merciful death compared to the processing that awaited them. On the planet's surface, Colonel Rodriguez's forces fought a running battle through the Cathoran capital, escorting groups of civilians to the waiting transports. The Ravager ground troops responded with increasing ferocity as they realized their prey was being stolen from them. "We've got a problem at evacuation point 3, Rodriguez called over the comm. "Ravager heavy units have broken through our eastern perimeter." "This is Morrison. We see them from orbit. Vigilant commencing precision strikes on their position." The destroyer's guns fired from orbit, the kinetic rounds screaming through the atmosphere to impact with devastating force among the advancing Ravager units. The alien troops scattered, momentarily halting their advance. "Thanks for the assist," Rodriguez acknowledged. "But we're running out of time. These people move slowly, especially the young and elderly. We need more transport capacity." Elena, monitoring the exchange from the Intrepid, turned to Admiral Cole. "Sir, the Cathoran atmospheric shuttles in the spaceport might still be operational. If we can secure that area, we could increase our evacuation capacity significantly." Cole considered this. "Morrison, do you copy that?" "Affirmative, Admiral. The spaceport is approximately 3 kilometers from Rodriguez's current position. Heavy Ravager presence in the area." Can you clear a path? Morrison's response was immediate. With pleasure, sir. The Vigilant adjusted its position once more, its main guns systematically eliminating Ravager positions around the spaceport. Meanwhile, Cole dispatched a company of Marines to secure the facility and assess the Cathoran shuttles. The battle continued to rage across multiple fronts. In space, the remaining human vessels fought with increasing desperation as their numbers dwindled. On the ground, Rodriguez's forces expanded their evacuation efforts, now utilizing both human transports and the captured Cathoran shuttles. Admiral, Elena reported, checking the latest figures. We've evacuated approximately 1.2 million Cathorans so far. Dr. Violin estimates there are at least another 2 billion that could potentially be saved. Cole's expression darkened. At the current rate, we'd need weeks, not hours. And we don't have weeks. As if to emphasize his point, the tactical display showed a new wave of Ravager vessels entering the system, reinforcements responding to the distress calls of the Harvester fleet. Sir, his executive officer said quietly, perhaps it's time to consider withdrawing with the Cathorans we've already saved. Cole stared at the display, weighing his options. The original mission parameters called for extracting as many civilians as possible without sacrificing the entire fleet. By those metrics, it was indeed time to retreat. But Cole had seen the processing centers. He had witnessed the systematic extermination of a peaceful species. And he had given his word to Dr. Violin. New orders, he announced. All vessels capable of atmospheric entry are to proceed to the surface immediately. Load as many Cathorans as physically possible, beyond safety protocols if necessary. Meanwhile, our combat vessels will execute a holding action to keep the Ravager fleet occupied. His staff exchanged concerned glances. Admiral, his executive officer ventured, that would mean committing our remaining combat vessels to what amounts to a suicide mission. I'm aware, Commander. This will be strictly volunteer. Any captain who wishes to withdraw with the evacuees may do so without censure. The message went out to the fleet. The response was unanimous. Not a single combat vessel withdrew. Instead, captains reported their readiness to engage in the holding action, buying time for the largest evacuation in human history. On the surface, Colonel Rodriguez received the new orders with grim satisfaction. About damn time, she muttered, before addressing her troops. Listen up. Change of plans. We're not leaving until we've packed every available vessel with civilians. Priority to children and young adults who can rebuild their society. The evacuation accelerated to a frantic pace. Human ships designed to carry hundreds were packed with thousands of Cathorans. The alien shuttles, designed for their lighter gravity, strained under the weight of so many passengers. Every available space, cargo holds, maintenance tunnels, even crew quarters, was filled with refugees. In orbit, the human combat vessels formed a last line of defense, engaging the Ravager reinforcements in a battle they could not hope to win, but merely extend. Ship after ship reported critical damage, their captains fighting on even as systems failed around them. The Vigilant, heavily damaged from multiple engagements, maintained its position above the primary evacuation zone. Captain Morrison coordinated with Rodriguez, directing orbital strikes to clear paths for the civilian convoys streaming toward the waiting transports. How many more? Morrison asked, his ship shuddering as another hit breached the hull. We've got at least 10,000 more at this evacuation point, Rodriguez replied, the sound of weapons fire audible in the background. Maybe 15 minutes to load them all. You've got 10, Morrison responded. That's all I can give you. On the Intrepid, Admiral Cole watched as the evacuation vessels, loaded beyond capacity with Cathoran refugees, began to break orbit, accelerating away from the battle toward the designated rendezvous point. Each successful departure represented thousands of lives saved, a small victory in the larger tragedy unfolding. Sir, his tactical officer reported, The Ravager fleet is adjusting their formation. They're trying to cut off the escape corridor. Intrepid will move to intercept, Cole ordered. Signal all remaining combat vessels to concentrate fire on these coordinates. We need to keep that corridor open at all costs. The flagship moved into position, its massive guns firing continuously at the advancing Ravager vessels. One by one, the remaining human ships joined the formation, creating a wall of firepower that the Ravagers could not easily penetrate. Elena worked frantically at her console, coordinating between the evacuation transports and the combat vessels. Admiral, I'm receiving reports from the surface. Colonel Rodriguez estimates they've loaded approximately 80% of the accessible Kathoran population. The rest are either too far from evacuation points or already in Ravager custody. Cole nodded grimly. That will have to be enough. Signal Rodriguez to prepare for final evacuation. All remaining ground forces are to withdraw to their vessels immediately. The battle had reached its climax. In space, the human fleet was down to less than 40 operational vessels against hundreds of Ravager ships. On the ground, Rodriguez's troops fought a fighting retreat, covering the final groups of Kathoran civilians as they boarded the waiting transports. Last transport lifting off now, Rodriguez reported, her voice strained from exhaustion. My team is aboard. We're packed so tight I can barely move, but we're ready for orbital insertion. Acknowledged, Colonel, Cole responded. All ships, adjust formation to cover the final transport's ascent. The remaining human vessels, including the heavily damaged Intrepid and Vigilant, positioned themselves between the ascending transport and the Ravager fleet. Their shields were depleted, their hulls breached in multiple sections, but their weapons remained operational and targeted. Fire everything we've got, Cole ordered. Clear a path for that transport. A final, devastating barrage erupted from the human ships, temporarily pushing back the Ravager advance. The last transport, carrying Rodriguez and thousands of Kathoran civilians, broke through the atmosphere and accelerated toward the escape corridor. They're clear, reported the tactical officer. Transport is away. Cole allowed himself a moment of satisfaction before issuing his final order. All vessels, emergency withdrawal. Fall back to rendezvous coordinates. The surviving human ships began their retreat, still firing as they maneuvered away from the planet. The Ravagers pursued, but their attention was divided between the escaping fleet and securing their remaining harvester ships. As the Intrepid prepared to jump to FTL, Elena received one final transmission from the surface, from Dr. Valen, who had remained behind to coordinate the evacuation of his people. Tell your world what happened here, the Kathoran scientist transmitted. Tell them that when the galactic community abandoned us, Earth alone answered our call. The Kathorans will never forget this day, nor the sacrifice of humanity. The message ended abruptly as the Ravagers jammed the remaining communication channels. Elena saved the transmission, tears streaming down her face as the Intrepid engaged its FTL drive, leaving the Cathora system behind. At the rendezvous point, the surviving vessels of the Terran fleet gathered to assess their losses and count the rescued. Of the original 120 ships, only 37 returned. Over 15,000 human personnel had been lost in the operation, but they had saved lives. The initial count of Kathoran refugees exceeded 2.8 billion, nearly 80% of their remaining population. It was the largest rescue operation in recorded galactic history. Admiral Cole, his uniform still stained with blood from a bridge injury, addressed the assembled commanders via holographic link. What we have accomplished here today goes beyond military action. We have reminded the galaxy that power comes with responsibility, and that no species should stand idle while another is exterminated. The journey back to Earth was solemn. The human vessels, many barely operational, limped homeward, escorting the massive convoy of refugee ships. Emergency supplies were distributed among the Cathorans. many of whom required immediate medical attention after their ordeal. Elena spent much of the return journey working with Dr. Vilen's colleagues, learning more about Cathoran culture and helping to coordinate their temporary settlement plans. The peaceful aliens were still in shock, both from the horrors they had endured and from the unexpected salvation provided by the supposedly dangerous humans. "We were told that Earth was a savage world that produced savage beings," one Cathoran elder told her. "Now we understand. You evolved in harshness, yes, but that hardship forged compassion, not merely strength." As news of the battle and rescue spread throughout the galaxy, the political landscape began to shift dramatically. The galactic community convened an emergency session, ostensibly to condemn Earth's violation of the non-interference doctrine. But the proceedings took an unexpected turn when evidence emerged of the community's prior knowledge of Ravager activities. Records revealed that the community had documented the destruction of 40 billion sentient beings across multiple systems, yet had maintained their policy of neutrality. The revelation sent shockwaves through galactic society, with many species beginning to question the leadership that had allowed such atrocities to continue unchallenged. Earth, once marginalized as the home of dangerous Deathworlders, suddenly found itself cast in a new light. President Hayes addressed not only humanity, but the broader galactic audience in a historic broadcast. "Today, I announce the formation of the Alliance of Free Worlds, with Earth and Cathora as its founding members. This alliance stands for a simple principle: that the strong have a duty to protect the vulnerable, and that no civilization should face extinction alone. To the Ravager Collective, hear me clearly. Your era of unchallenged predation is over. Every world you threaten from this day forward will find Earth standing beside them. And to the galactic community, your policy of non-interference has become complicity in genocide. We invite all species who share our values to join our alliance and help forge a more just galaxy." The response was immediate and polarizing. Several species, particularly those who had suffered Ravager incursions in the past, expressed interest in the new alliance. Others, including some of the most powerful members of the community, warned of the dangers of humans expanding their influence. The Ravagers themselves issued only a single communication, a promise of vengeance against Earth for interfering with their harvest. On Luna Station, now a bustling center of diplomatic activity, Elena Vasquez had been promoted to Director of Interspecies Communications. Her office overlooked the vast array of transmission equipment that had first received the Thoran distress call. Admiral Cole, recently appointed Supreme Commander of the Alliance Defense Forces, joined her at the viewport. Together, they watched as Cathoran engineers worked alongside humans, upgrading the station's capabilities with their advanced technology. "Did you ever imagine it would come to this?" Elena asked. "When you first heard that distress call?" Cole shook his head. "I thought we were undertaking a rescue mission, perhaps making a political statement. I never expected to spark a galactic realignment." "The Alliance already has 7 member species, with 3 more in negotiation," Elena noted. "And applications from refugees seeking asylum have overwhelmed our processing systems." "We've awakened something," Cole observed. "Not just in other species, but in ourselves. For too long, we accepted our isolation, the Deathworlder label that kept us marginalized. Now, we've found our purpose in this galaxy." Elena nodded, remembering Dr. Valen's final message. "We answered when no one else would. That means something." "It means everything," Cole corrected her. "And it's just the beginning." As they spoke, Luna Station's newly enhanced receivers detected another signal, another distress call, from another system under Ravager attack. Without hesitation, Elena began the alert sequence, knowing that this time, the response would be swift and decisive. The Deathworlders were awake now, and the galaxy would never be the same.